Are you applying to an Ivy League college? Stick around. We're going to give you some great tips and strategies to make sure your application stands out. As we're waiting for the rest of our platforms to join the stream, get comfy, grab a snack, and get ready, and we'll give you some great strategies to put towards an Ivy League application. Hey, so hello YouTube, hello TikTok. We are just waiting for our Instagrammers to join us, and then we will get started shortly. All right, everybody. So we are live on all platforms. So once again, are you applying to an Ivy League college? If so, you're definitely in the right place. Over the next 40 minutes or so, we'll be giving you some great strategies to make sure your application stands out. My name is Brittany. I'm an admissions expert, and I'm joined by two lovely co-hosts today, Chris and Sophia. Can you ladies introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name's Chris Seiss, and I'm the former Director of Operations and Admissions at the School of Medicine for Stanford University.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Wazinski. I am an admissions expert here at BMO. I also earned my bachelor's degree from Columbia University in sociology and creative writing, and am now working on my graduate degree at New York University.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies. So as a few more people continue to join the stream, I just want to point out that there will be a lot of information covered today. And to get the most out of it, I want to kindly ask you to give me your full attention. I know that is asking for a lot since most of you are on your phones. And I know it's very easy to keep scrolling through your timeline. Or maybe you're watching me on your little screen while your big screen plays in the background. Either way, let's try to lock in for the next little while so we can get you some great tips and strategies for your Ivy League application.
Right, Brittany, because our goal here today is to help your Ivy League college application stand out in comparison to the thousands of other students that are applying this cycle.
Exactly. And on that note, the chat is open, so please feel free to send in your questions. We'll be answering them throughout the stream or during the Q&A portion at the end. So before we jump in, we have a few important questions for you. Are you serious about getting into an Ivy League school? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get in? And are you ready to invest in yourself in your future? If you said yes to any or all of these questions, you are definitely in the right place because we are serious about helping you. My co-host and I will be giving you some great strategies for essays, reference letters, and interviews over the next 40 minutes or so.
In case you guys are thinking Ivy League schools are too competitive, or no one in my family went to an Ivy League school, or perhaps I don't have enough time to submit the perfect application. Instead, we want you to embrace the challenge, break tradition, and forge your own destiny. We know that Ivy League schools are notoriously competitive, but this is also your opportunity to embrace that challenge and stand out among all of the other thousands of applicants. Instead of thinking, no one in my family has gone to college or to an Ivy League college, think to yourself, I'll be the first in my family to attend. And if you're pressed for time, we've got you. After this stream, you will walk away with solid strategies to help you craft that perfect application with ease. So please, again, stick around, give us your full attention, and know you are in the exact right place you need to be to get those Ivy League applications started today.
Thanks, Sophia. All right, guys, so let's recognize the elephant in the room and address the big problem with Ivy League admissions today. The truth is, getting into college is becoming increasingly more competitive, and getting into the Ivy Leagues is the most competitive at all. To back that statement up with some stats, Brown, Columbia, Harvard, Princeton, and Yale all had an acceptance rate of less than 6% in the last admission cycle. Now, I'm not throwing the stats at you to scare you or deter you. I do want to let you know that studies show that a significant number of students with top averages and standardized test scores do not get in, and alternatively, a significant number of students with less than perfect averages and standardized test scores do get in. With this in mind, we can conclude that you cannot solely rely on your grades and your standardized test scores to get you that coveted acceptance letter. You need to pay attention to the other contributing factors that play a role. And in case your application is going to be a critical component that can make or break your chance of pursuing post-secondary education. This is why it's important to make your Ivy League application stand out while simultaneously avoiding those common mistakes that will end in your application getting rejected. Now, on that note, Chris, do you mind going over those top 5 common mistakes that you have seen as an admissions officer?
Sure. Number one, I would say, is starting your application too late. You want to give yourself plenty of time. Another one would be selecting an inappropriate school. You want to make sure that you're going to be a good fit. Including too many experiences, seen that a few times. Not answering the question that's being asked and following the application instructions. Also having poorly written applications that are not clearly edited and revised.
Wow, so it really sounds like a lot of the time students don't realize that they're making these detrimental mistakes before they submit their application. I know this can make it seem like applying to an Ivy League school seem like an uphill battle, but on that note, Chris, do you have any advice for combating those 5 mistakes that you just went through?
Sure. I would say number one, start your application early. You want to give yourself plenty of time. There's going to be several components to complete your application to an Ivy League school, and it's going to require a lot of your time and energy. Not to mention the fact that you could be juggling school, and maybe you're working outside of school and attending extracurricular activities. So start as early as possible. Secondly, you need to be strategic about the school that you select. You want to determine that you're going to be a competitive applicant. So this means checking the averages, like the GPAs and standardized test scores of accepted applicants, and make sure that you're either at par or above those test scores and grades. And also prerequisite courses. So you want to make sure that you're checking your transcripts to make sure that you're satisfying all of those requirements. And students also should take a look at the school's mission statement. This is where they're going to talk about their values and mandate. And so if you're selecting a school that aligns with your own personal values, then you're sure to enjoy the next 4 years at that school. And then lastly, I'd say residency preferences. Some schools have a strong preference for in-state or in-province candidates, and that could lower your chances of acceptance. Not to say that you won't get in, but if you're not from that state or province, it's going to lower your chances to get in. And then I mentioned including too many experiences. So it's going to sound odd, but if you want to show, you don't want to show every single job or volunteer experience or extracurricular activity that you've had. We talked about quality over quantity. You want to make sure that you're only including the experiences that are going to help your application, that they're going to show a clear progression and commitment over time. So in this case alone, it's less is more. You usually hear opposite, but you want quality over quantity. And then students tend not to answer the questions that are being asked in their application or on the essays. So it's maybe they're not following the instructions. It seems like it's obvious, but you'd be surprised how many times that I've seen this happen. So you want to make sure that you are reading the instructions, reading what they're asking for in the application essays, and just the application in general. Because making these kinds of mistakes are going to show us on the admissions committee that you're not really paying attention, or you're not following instructions, and you're not showing attention to detail. So even if you have a strong application, these little mistakes could be detrimental to your acceptance. And then the fifth one, poorly written applications. Very clear, you need to revise. You can't say that enough. You want to make sure that not only you look at your application, but have somebody else look at it too, 2 or 3 people. Because a lot of times when you're writing over and over, you're reading the stuff that you've written, you miss easy things. It's just something that happens. You read something so many times, you may miss a spelling error or grammatical error. You may miss the fact that you're not answering a question the way it was asked. So have other people look at it and then make sure that you revise it.
Excellent. Yes. Thanks so much for going over that. Hopefully that helps calm everyone's nerves about how to avoid those detrimental errors that would inevitably lead to your application getting rejected. Now, Sophia, what would you say are some of the most critical components of an Ivy League application that students should be mindful of?
Definitely the essays first and foremost. Unfortunately, a lot of students don't understand the true purpose of the essays, both the personal statement and the supplemental essays, which ends up leading to each section being very weak by the time that they apply. Another important element are the interviews. You want to make sure you're prepared for those, and also make sure that you have reference letters that are going to be written strongly on your behalf.
Excellent. So you made a really good point first that some students might not understand the purpose of their essays, leading them to not put significant effort into them. I know for me personally, when I'm given a task, knowing why I'm doing it, it makes me put a little bit more effort into it. So can you go over the purpose of those essays, both primary and supplemental?
Absolutely. So the purpose of these sections are for you to write about yourself, helping the Ivy League admissions determine several different factors about you. The first is, are you a good fit for the program? Ivy League schools want to ensure that you and their program are a perfect match. They want to make sure that your interests, goals, and values align. So think of this as finding the right puzzle piece, right? The Ivy League schools want to see that you complete the picture that they have in mind for their institution. And your application is going to help them understand if you can thrive in their particular academic and social environment. The next is if you have excellent written communication skills. Your application essays are the opportunity to demonstrate your ability to express ideas clearly, persuasively, and coherently. Your writing skills are not only going to shape your application, but they'll also signal if you're actually prepared for the rigor of assignments and discussions at an Ivy League institution. Your essays also tell the admissions whether or not you have what we call essential qualities, right? So Ivy Leagues are in fact interested in more than just your academic prowess. They want to see that you possess qualities that contribute to your overall success in a dynamic and academic environment. This could be critical thinking, intellectual curiosity, time management, collaboration and leadership skills, and an overall growth mindset. So your application gives you the opportunity to showcase how these qualities have played a role in your journey thus far and how you're going to continue to bring them to your future college experience. So even if the answer is yes, I possess all of those qualities, you still need to make sure that you're actually demonstrating them in your essays. And finally, your essays will help you answer the question, how are you different from the other thousands of applicants that are applying? We know that the Ivy Leagues boast some of the lowest acceptance rates of all universities in the world, as Brittany mentioned earlier with some statistics, right? So they're going to be looking for growing experts in a main field of interest, those who demonstrate making their dreams into realities, and those who can utilize their resources to positively affect themselves and society. So in short, the Ivy League is looking to invest in students who they believe will change the world. So if you're interested in the Ivy Leagues, that might need to be the first question you ask yourself. How will you change the world?
Excellent. Thanks, Sophia. So now that we have a better idea of the purpose behind these essays, Chris, are you able to walk us through some strategies for writing those killer essays for an Ivy League application?
Absolutely, Brittany. Again, we're going to say this over and over throughout this kind of a conversation is number one, follow the instructions. Make sure that you are answering the question or prompt that's being asked. Make sure that you're abiding by any word count or character limit. It's very important that you follow the instructions and don't submit something that is not what is being asked for. By doing this, you can convey maturity and professionalism. Um, that's the other thing that's important in your essay. You want to share pivotal personal experiences that you navigated, maybe with self-reflection or personal development. You want to showcase deliberate planning, leadership and involvement, and also a well-defined roadmap for your future. You also want to demonstrate motivation. So we in the admissions office want to understand what inspires you and how you pursue those interests. So rather than just stating your goals, you want to talk about the reasons behind these goals and then show a genuine enthusiasm that's fueling your ambition. You want to give the reader a deeper understanding of your character. And when you do that, when you give them examples, you also want to provide evidence. So in addition to talking about your qualities and experiences, you want to make sure that you offer concrete evidence. This is all going to lend credibility to your claim. So you want to use anecdotes or specific examples, for instance. If you're describing a leadership skill, maybe recount a particular instance where your leadership made a positive impact. It's not only your essay, this is not only going to make your essay more convincing, but it's also going to help the reader to connect more deeply with your narrative. Finally, ensure that your essay is written with proper structure and grammar and flow. You want to make sure that it's polished and it demonstrates your ability to communicate effectively. You want to be sure and organize your thoughts logically by using paragraphs to separate different ideas or stages of your story. Again, pay close attention to spelling and punctuation and grammar. Any of these kind of errors are going to distract from your message, and they're going to convey your lack of attention to detail to the admissions committee. Additionally, you want to ensure that your essay is going to flow smoothly from one point to the next. You want to transition between paragraphs and sentences to help guide your reader through the essay. You want to make it enjoyable for them. Remember, they're reading maybe thousands of essays, so you want to make sure that they don't lose interest in your essay, halfway through. You want to make sure that it flows and it's exciting for them to read.
Thanks, Chris. Those are really great tips. And just to piggyback off of the last point you've made about structure, the personal statement should be structured like any other academic essay, meaning it needs to have a clear introduction, body, and conclusion. As a refresher, we're going to run over that structure really quick, starting with your introduction. So your introduction is what will make or break your overall statement. Making a strong first impression is going to be important at every stage of the application process. But here we're going to call this in your essay the primacy effect. The primacy effect dictates that the first impression you make on someone, whether through writing or in person, will cement their judgments about you as a person, whether positive or negative. This means that even if the rest of your essay is strong, it might not be enough to overturn the impression that you've left through a weak opening, paragraph, or statement. So your introduction needs to start with a creative and captivating opening sentence. You want to make sure that introductory sentence is compelling, thoughtful, and attention-grabbing to ensure you are making a positive impression on the reader right from the start, making them want to continue to read your essay. After that, you need to make sure you include a roadmap for a remainder of the essay. Here, you're going to give a brief overview of what is to come in the body paragraphs. Unlike high school English, which tells you that your introductory paragraph has to say something along the lines of, in this essay, I will discuss ... We don't want to have a dry introduction of your experiences. Instead, you're going to provide a roadmap which introduces the overall theme of your essay, and that's really the best way to go. Talking about body paragraphs, right? This is where we're going to elaborate on the ideas that you've introduced in the introduction. Whatever you provided in your roadmap will be expanded upon in your body paragraphs. And to do this, you're going to draw upon personal experiences in order to provide evidence, like Chris was just telling us about. In your exploration of each experience, you'll explain how, for example, you interacted with community members or fellow students or maybe colleagues, and how that changed your approach to a problem or informed your worldviews or taught you a new skill or allowed you to demonstrate something that pushed you further along in your road towards a college degree at an Ivy League institution. And again, like we said before, this is about quality over quantity. We want to stick to 1 to 3 points maximum. Do not be tempted to use your personal essay as a chance to restate your entire resume. This is going to limit your ability to fully explore each experience. This is what the essay is really all about, is the opportunity to explore and invest further. So if you're not able to expand on why each experience is so important, then the reviewer, the admissions officer, doesn't get the opportunity to gain insight into your life, your personality, your skills, or your motivations. So again, we want to make sure we choose no more than 3 experiences overall in our essay, ideally 1 experience per body paragraph. And finally, we will be left with a conclusion. And this paragraph is going to be just as important as the introduction, since it relays your final message to the reader. For this reason, it should not be a simple summary of everything you've already discussed. Instead, it should be insightful and captivating and ultimately leave the reader wanting more. Here, we're dealing with something called the recency effect. And the recency effect dictates that people tend to recall the latest information more accurately than older information. So that means that an admissions officer will remember what you said in your conclusion in more detail than any other part of your essay. So for this reason, you want to make sure your conclusion is as informative and as powerful as it can be.
Excellent. Thank you both for those tips. So, Chris and Sophia just gave you an abundance of tips for perfecting your essays, but I'm sure you're wondering, what does all of that look like in practice? So, we're going to read a portion of a supplemental essay so that you can contextualize that advice that we just went through. The prompt for the essay is as follows: discuss a book, artwork, film, or scientific discovery that has had a profound impact on your intellectual development. How has this work influenced your perspective on the world, your academic interests, or your desire to contribute to society? Chris, can you start by reading that introductory paragraph?
Sure. Many years later, as they faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. These haunting words from Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude encapsulated the paradoxical nature of Latin America, a region where the extraordinary and the ordinary are forever entwined. A masterpiece of magical realism, Marquez's novel not only opened the doors to a world of wonder, but also served as the key that connected me with my Latin American heritage and our complicated past. With its themes of resilience and storytelling, it inspired me to embark on my own transformative journey where I would become a national advocate for marginalized communities.
Thank you so much, Chris. So why is this such a strong introduction paragraph or introductory paragraph? It's starting with a captivating opening that's drawing the reader in. They immediately engage the reader by recounting a compelling story so that we're interested, invested, and we're going to remain focused for the entire essay. They're also providing what's called a roadmap, right? The student is using the final sentence of the first paragraph to create a roadmap so that we, as a reader, have a sense of what's going to come in the subsequent paragraph. Can you tell us about the next paragraph, Chris?
Sure. As a student of Latin American descent, 100 Years of Solitude resonated with me on a deeply personal level. The book's fictional town of Macondo bore a striking resemblance to the stories my grandparents would share about their own small, forgotten hometowns. The characters' struggles and triumphs mirrored the experiences of my own ancestors who navigated the tumultuous waves of Latin American history. Through Marquez's prose, I felt a profound connection to my roots and renewed sense of pride in my heritage. However, this novel did more than just reinforce my cultural identity. It served as a stark lesson on the injustices that have plagued Latin America for centuries. From colonial exploitation to political turmoil and social inequity, the novel unflinchingly exposes the region's wounds. Through the multi-generational saga of Buendia family, I witnessed the cyclical nature of violence and oppression, mirroring the historical realities of Latin America.
Thank you again, Chris. So let's talk about what makes this such a strong body paragraph. First and foremost, they're elaborating on the roadmap that they provided in the introductory paragraph. If we can remember the intro, the student claimed that they went on a transformative journey. And here in this body paragraph, we're taken on that journey with them to see how that idea is really being fleshed out. They're connecting the ideas from the introduction to the body paragraph and then also providing evidence. And how are they providing evidence? In this essay, we have very vivid imagery, as well as a specific example of how this book connected to the student's life. This is what we call showing, not telling, which is the strongest way for you to provide evidence and keep your reader invested in the story you are providing. Now, we won't have time to go through the entire essay today, but just to give you full context, Chris, can you read the concluding paragraph for this essay?
Absolutely. As I continue my journey, I carry with me the lessons learned from Marquez's masterpiece. I am determined to be a voice for the voiceless, to advocate for justice and equality, and to ensure that the stories of marginalized communities around the world are not forgotten, but rather transformed into narratives of hope, progress, and resilience. Just as 100 Years of Solitude revealed the cyclical nature of history, I aim to break the cycles of solitude and injustice, working towards a brighter future for all who face discrimination and inequality.
Thank you again, Chris. So this is an excellent conclusion. Why? Because it's not just a dry summary. This conclusion is providing an insightful reflection on the students' evolving motivations, centering around a common theme that go across a range of experiences. Ultimately, here in this conclusion, they are showcasing their personal growth, and they're also being very future oriented. They're providing us a picture of what it might mean to actually admit this student into the institution, creating rather a memorable conclusion and overall essay.
Excellent. Thank you both for going through that. And I do want to point out that that was from a successful applicant, and it is very clear why that essay was so strong. So earlier, Sophia mentioned that selecting references as being an important part of an Ivy League application. Chris, are you able to walk us through the best practices for going about selecting the best referees?
Yes, and again, I'm going to be repetitive here. The number one thing, again, is to follow the instructions. So if there's instructions on who the references should be, how many you need, you want to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. And additionally, your referees should know you very well. You want to choose references who know your personal, you on a personal level. You want assessment of your character, your skills, and your achievements. It can include people like mentors, community leaders, employers or supervisors from internships, or even volunteer positions. Choose references that you can trust. Choose references who are going to genuinely support you and your aspirations, and they're willing to write a strong recommendation on your behalf. So it's important that they're invested in your success and that they can speak positively about your qualifications and potential. Also, it's important that you know when to ask. Like we said, starting your application early is going to provide you enough time to get it right. So you also want to provide your referees enough time and contact them well in advance so that they have that time to prepare a good reference letter for you. You want to acknowledge that they have a busy schedule, and you want to politely inquire if they're available and willing to write you a letter. But again, remember that many students are going to be asking some of these same references to write letters for them. So you want to respect their decision. If they decline because they have time constraints or other reasons, be respectful in that and just seek another referee to choose. And then finally, you want to know how to ask them. You want to clearly communicate why you're asking them for a letter. You want to explain that you're applying to a specific university, a specific program. You want to describe your career or academic goals. And this is going to help them to understand the importance and that their support for your application is going to be. You want to supply them with relevant information about the university that you're applying to, including any kind of specific focus that you're interested in and admissions criteria. And it's also important you share your resume or CV, your academic transcripts, any other relevant documents that can assist them in writing a comprehensive, positive letter for you.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Those are some really great tips. So now you guys have the knowledge to write some killer essays and select some really great referees for your reference letters. Finally, although this is not applicable to every single Ivy League applicant, interviews are a very important thing to prepare for if you do receive one. Sophia, can you take us through some tips about the interview process based on your own experience?
Absolutely. So the most important thing for you to do is first make sure that you've made yourself available for an interview invitation. And secondly, to be prepared for that interview to take place. So in my own personal experience, there are no specific questions that any of these schools are going to ask. Instead, your interview is going to be an exciting conversation between yourself and the alumni. They're going to learn about your personality, your disposition, your passions, and then answer your dying questions about that school, which is really your opportunity to show true interest and fit for the school. So for example, my alumni interviewer and I spoke about the conflict between psychoanalysis and literary criticism and how that had related or showed up in my supplementary research paper that I had submitted in my application to Columbia. On the other hand, a friend of mine, once I was attending, told me that they were interviewed by an alumni who had went online and searched up their engineering engineering blog so that they could discuss his thoughts on using nanotechnology in the latest building material. So really your best bet is to prepare by knowing your own application materials and then having really strong interview and conversational skills. Lastly, it's important for you to consent to contact in each of your Ivy League applications. This is where you consent to being contacted by the school about your application or to have an invitation for an alumni interview. So this will continue to be the most imperative choice to give yourself that opportunity to deepen your application and then receive consideration.
Excellent. All right. Thank you both again. So now we have some great tips for your essays, your referees, and your interviews. As we start to wrap up today's live stream, I really want to encourage all of you to take action today. If you've benefited from this presentation, you're really going to love what we have in store for you next, which is BMO's application review program. So this is the #1 way to ensure you get accepted to your dream Ivy League school. When you work with us, you'll get access to experts with years of proven experiences who will help you generate unique ideas based on your own experiences. You will get unlimited reviews of your documents with expert feedback 100% of the time. So remember earlier when Chris said it's good to have a second and a third set of eyes looking at your essays? How about a set of experts doing that, making sure that you are submitting the strongest possible application? So you're probably wondering, how do you take action and make your dreams of acceptance come true? Schedule your free consultation at bemofreeconsult.com. That is BEMO freeconsult.com. During that call, we'll go over your programs, address all your questions, and create a personalized plan of action for you. While you are looking into scheduling your free consultation, we're going to go over some questions that we received on Instagram, as well as some common ones that we see in the application process. So one that came up on Instagram, I know we can't really narrow down specifically, but there was a question what said, what are some examples of extracurriculars that will make your application stand out? Now, I know this isn't black and white, but Chris, can you give us some examples of ones that, really stuck out to you?
Well, it's not a specific extracurricular activity, but I would say that it's an activity that you are involved in for a long period of time. You don't want to list every extracurricular activity that you've been involved in, but maybe you were captain of a swim team, or you were some major player in some sporting activity. So it's something that you showed a lot of commitment and leadership in, and that you spent a good chunk of your time on. That's going to be much more useful in showing your commitment, your leadership, your progression throughout that activity. So pick something that's going to show all those things that these schools are looking for, the types of qualities that we talked about. So those kinds of examples are going to be stronger than, say, you had a summer job at a fast food restaurant for 3 weeks and you hated it. So you don't want to include something like that. You want to show something that shows more of your commitment and excitement about what you were involved in.
Excellent. Okay, so once again, quality over quantity. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Another one pretty common is, when should I apply? Sophia, are you able to shine some light on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to apply according to what your interests are in terms of receiving feedback from the application that you're submitting, right? So there's several different timelines for your application. We often urge people, especially if you're applying to an Ivy League institution, to consider applying for early decision or early action. This is going to allow you to get your application in early as possible, and then also receive an admission notification as soon as possible, right? And in that event, if you're going to be applying for early decision, early action, those applications will be due in the beginning of November, meaning that you're going to want to get your application started as soon as possible. On the other hand, if you are more interested in regular decision, you will be applying for the beginning of January, and you're still going to want to get started as soon as possible, but you have a little bit more time to get your application together, definitely getting started sometime over the summer.
Excellent. Okay, great. This one, Chris, I'm going to pass your way since you've probably had the most, or you've probably seen this the most, but what are some common red flags you see on Ivy League applications?
Yeah, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but again, make sure that you're reading the application, you're following the instructions, you're answering questions that are asked from you, and using relevant experiences and kind of things. also, I would say do your homework because as Sophia mentioned, especially if you get called for an interview, they're going to ask you questions about their university and how you're going to fit in. Make sure you do your homework and you know where you're applying, what you're applying for, what are their expectations, and just putting that strong foot forward. I think the best way to do that is start early and revise, revise, revise. Keep reading, re-editing, rechecking everything to make sure. Because again, you want to make your application stand out. There's thousands of people applying. You want to put your strongest.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So on that note, one last one, and I think this one is probably perfect for Sophia because she just gave us some tips. Sophia, a student asked, I don't do well in interviews. Since these interviews are kind of out of the norm, how would you suggest that I prepare for them?
Absolutely. So there are two components here. The first is that you want to make sure that you know your own application materials, right? So reading through your essays, as well as maybe thinking to yourself very clearly about who you are and what your goals are, what visions you have for yourself in the future, being able to connect the various components of your application that you've put forth so that you have a really clear and compelling narrative that you're able to say out loud and communicate to somebody else is the best way that you can be prepared in that sense. In terms of communication skills, you're going to want to get your best friends and your best family members who are willing to sit down and practice those the most pertinent conversational skills as possible with you in preparation for the interview. That really goes a long way. If you can sit together, practice those hard questions and prepare for the various ways that you'll be able to answer those questions that you didn't fully anticipate.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And again, I do want to point out that interview preparation is part of our application review program. So that if that is something you're very nervous about, we can absolutely help you with that when you book your free consult with us. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. I want to give a huge shout out to Sophia and Chris for joining today as co-hosts and providing you all with a abundance of tips to help your Ivy League application stand out. As I leave you today, I want to remind you to always believe, become, and be more. We'll see you guys.